South Africa, a land of stunning beauty, diverse cultures, and a troubled past. At the heart of this troubled past lies apartheid, a system of racial segregation and discrimination that cast a long shadow over the nation. Apartheid, an Afrikaans word meaning apartness, was more than just a policy. It was a way of life that touched every aspect of South African society. From 1948 to 1994, apartheid reigned supreme, enforced by a white minority government determined to maintain its grip on power and privilege. This system was rooted in the belief that white South Africans were superior to their black counterparts, deserving of greater rights and opportunities. Black South Africans, on the other hand, were treated as second-class citizens in their own land. Apartheid's roots can be traced back to the era of European colonialism, a period marked by the exploitation of resources and the subjugation of indigenous populations. The arrival of European settlers in South Africa in the 17th century set in motion a chain of events that would culminate in the formalization of racial segregation with the rise of apartheid. The system of apartheid was meticulously crafted to create a society starkly divided along racial lines. It was a system that benefited the white minority at the expense of the black majority, leaving an indelible mark on the social, economic, and political landscape of South Africa. Imagine a life where your every move is dictated by the color of your skin, where you live, work, and even love is determined by a system designed to oppress and marginalize you. This was the stark reality for millions of black South Africans under apartheid. The Group Areas Act, one of the cornerstones of apartheid legislation, confined black South Africans to designated areas known as townships. These townships were overcrowded, underdeveloped, and located far from economic opportunities, effectively trapping black South Africans in a cycle of poverty and despair. Education, too, became a weapon in the hands of the apartheid regime. Bantu education, as it was known, was designed to provide black South Africans with an inferior education, one that would prepare them for a life of servitude to the white minority. Black schools were chronically underfunded, lacking basic resources, and staffed with poorly trained teachers. The pass laws, perhaps the most hated symbol of apartheid, were a constant source of humiliation and harassment for black South Africans. These laws required black South Africans to carry identification documents at all times, restricting their movement and freedom. Failure to produce these documents on demand could result in fines, imprisonment, or even worse. The impact of apartheid on the mental health of black South Africans was profound. The constant stress of living under such an oppressive system took a heavy toll, leading to increased rates of depression, anxiety, and post-traumatic stress disorder. Families were torn apart, communities were shattered, and the human spirit was tested to its limits. While black South Africans bore the brunt of apartheid's brutality, white South Africans enjoyed a life of privilege and opportunity. Apartheid was designed to benefit them, and it did so in countless ways. From the moment they were born, white South Africans were afforded opportunities denied to their black counterparts. They had access to the best schools, healthcare, and job opportunities. The color of their skin was their passport to a life of comfort and ease. The government poured resources into white communities, ensuring that they had access to quality education, healthcare, and infrastructure. White South Africans lived in spacious homes, enjoyed high standards of living, and benefited from a system that was rigged in their favor. Businesses were encouraged to hire white South Africans, and those who did so were often rewarded with government contracts and tax breaks. This created a self-perpetuating cycle of white privilege, where wealth and opportunity were passed down from one generation to the next. Apartheid created a stark contrast between the lives of black and white South Africans. It was a system that benefited one group at the expense of the other, leaving a legacy of inequality and injustice that continues to haunt South Africa today. Despite the oppressive nature of apartheid, the spirit of resistance burned brightly within the hearts of black South Africans. From the very beginning, they refused to accept their fate passively, choosing instead to fight for their freedom and dignity. The African National Congress, formed in 1912, emerged as a leading voice in the fight against apartheid. Through peaceful protests, civil disobedience, and international advocacy, the ANC sought to dismantle the system of racial segregation and usher in a new era of equality for all South Africans. Other organizations such as the Pan-Africanist Congress and the South African Communist Party also played significant roles in the anti-apartheid struggle. These organizations challenged the apartheid regime on multiple fronts, mobilizing mass support and inspiring hope in the face of adversity. The Sharpeville Massacre of 1960, where police opened fire on peaceful protesters killing 69 people, proved to be a turning point in the anti-apartheid struggle. The massacre shocked the world, drawing international condemnation of the apartheid regime and galvanizing support for the anti-apartheid movement. Despite facing brutal repression, imprisonment, and even death, the brave men and women of the anti-apartheid movement never gave up hope. They knew that their fight was just, and they were determined to see it through to the end. Section 5. A Nation Reborn. The End of Apartheid. The year 1994 marked a watershed moment in South African history. After decades of struggle and sacrifice, the apartheid regime finally crumbled, paving the way for the birth of a new democratic South Africa. The release of Nelson Mandela, the iconic leader of the ANC from prison in 1990 after 27 years of captivity, was a testament to the indomitable spirit of the human will. Mandela's release, coupled with the unbanning of political parties and the repeal of apartheid laws, set the stage for a peaceful transition to democracy. The first multiracial elections in South Africa's history were held on April 27, 1994. Millions of South Africans, many voting for the first time in their lives, lined up to cast their ballots, marking the dawn of a new era for their nation. The ANC, led by Nelson Mandela, won a landslide victory in the elections, ushering in a government committed to equality, reconciliation, and social justice. The world watched in awe as South Africa, once a pariah state, embarked on a remarkable journey of transformation. The end of apartheid was not just a victory for South Africa, it was a triumph for humanity. It served as a powerful reminder that even the most deeply entrenched systems of oppression can be dismantled through the collective will of a people determined to be free. Section 6. Scars of the Past. Apartheid's legacy of inequality. While the end of apartheid brought about a wave of euphoria and hope, it also exposed the deep scars left behind by decades of racial segregation and discrimination. The legacy of apartheid continues to cast a long shadow over South Africa, manifesting itself in persistent inequalities and social divisions. One of the most glaring legacies of apartheid is the economic disparity between black and white South Africans. Despite the implementation of black economic empowerment policies aimed at redressing past injustices, the wealth gap remains stubbornly wide. Black South Africans continue to face higher rates of unemployment, poverty, and lack of access to quality education and healthcare. The townships, once symbols of apartheid's cruelty, remain pockets of poverty and deprivation, a stark reminder of the unfinished business of reconciliation. Racial tensions, though less overt than during the apartheid era, continue to simmer beneath the surface of South African society. Incidents of racism and discrimination, both subtle and overt, serve as painful reminders of the work that still needs to be done to heal the wounds of the past. The psychological scars of apartheid run deep. The trauma of living under such a brutal system has left many black South Africans with a legacy of anger, resentment, and mistrust. Meanwhile, many white South Africans struggle to come to terms with their country's past and the role they played, even if indirectly, in perpetuating the system of apartheid. Section 7. Bridging the Divide, the Long Road to Reconciliation. The dismantling of apartheid marked the beginning of a long and arduous journey towards reconciliation and nation-building in South Africa. It was a journey that required a fundamental shift in mindset, a willingness to confront the demons of the past, and a commitment to building a future based on equality and justice for all. The Truth and Reconciliation Commission, established in 1995, played a pivotal role in this process. Led by Archbishop Desmond Tutu, the TRC provided a platform for victims of apartheid-era atrocities to share their stories, and for perpetrators to seek amnesty in exchange for full disclosure of their crimes. The TRC's work was both painful and necessary. It exposed the horrors of apartheid in all its brutality, forcing South Africans to confront the uncomfortable truths of their past. While the TRC's process of forgiveness and reconciliation was not without its critics, it played a crucial role in laying the foundation for a more just and equitable South Africa. Reconciliation, however, is not merely about apologies and forgiveness, it's about addressing the structural inequalities that continue to divide South African society. It's about ensuring that all South Africans have equal access to opportunities and that the playing field is leveled for future generations. Section 8. Never forget the importance of remembering apartheid. In the annals of history, there are events so horrific, so inhumane that they must never be forgotten. Apartheid is one such event. It is our duty as citizens of the world to ensure that the lessons learned from this dark chapter in human history are never forgotten, that the stories of those who suffered under apartheid are told and retold, and that future generations understand the devastating consequences of racial hatred and discrimination. Remembering apartheid is not about dwelling on the past, it's about learning from it. It's about recognizing the dangers of prejudice, intolerance, and the abuse of power. It's about understanding that the fight for equality and justice is an ongoing one, a fight that requires constant vigilance and a commitment to upholding the values of human dignity and respect for all. We must educate our children about apartheid, teaching them to recognize and challenge injustice in all its forms. We must support initiatives that promote tolerance, understanding, and respect for diversity, and we must never allow ourselves to become complacent, for the forces of hatred and division are always lurking, waiting for an opportunity to resurface. Section 9. Building a Brighter Future. Lessons from Apartheid. The story of apartheid is not just a South African story, it is a human story. It is a story about the dangers of unchecked power, the corrosive effects of prejudice, and the resilience of the human spirit in the face of adversity. As we reflect on the legacy of apartheid, let us remember that the fight for equality and justice is a marathon, not a sprint. There will be setbacks along the way, challenges to overcome, and moments when progress seems elusive. But we must never lose sight of the goal, a world where all people are treated with dignity and respect, regardless of the color of their skin. Let the lessons of apartheid serve as a beacon, guiding us towards a brighter future. Let us honor the sacrifices of those who fought for freedom and equality by building a world where such atrocities are never repeated. Let us create a world where the words "never again" are not just a hollow promise but a lived reality for all.